You're listening to Planet Zero, an original science fiction story by Brian Donahue, read by the author. Chapter 16, The Message. Gates and a small crew watched redemption burn in space above Planet Zero. His eyes filled with tears and his bottom lip began to tremble. He was starting to really hate this planet. The commander was confused and worn out. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, and he assumed the rest of his crewmates felt the same way. "I don't understand," said Adina. "I thought she said she would help us escape." Gates responded, allowing his frustration to come through in his tone. "I know, Adina. I'm confused too. Maybe she did all she could." Wright spoke into the despair to interject. "Commander, we only have so much fuel in our tanks, and any extra energy we had was depleted trying to stabilize this ship. We need a plan, or we'll lose power and end up afloat in space." Gates breathed in deeply and said, "Is there any indication of life or technology on the far side of this planet?" "Are you kidding?" asked Adina incredulously. Johnson manipulated her controls and responded, "Not as far as I can tell, Commander. Remember, though, that object came out of the ocean after we thought there was no technology on this world." "Acknowledged, Johnson. Thank you. Mr. Wright, do you have enough fuel to get to the other side?" Wright did the math in his head and said, "I believe so, Commander." Gates nodded and said, "Take us over there, then. Try to find us a good hiding spot." He shifted in his chair and pulled out from a cargo pocket on his spacesuit the data recorder Atkinson had given him while he and Montgomery were still inside the object. He asked Wright, "How long will it take us to set down on the planet?" "About half an hour if I take the long way around that monster." Gates wanted to make sure his desire was fully understood. "Take the long way, Mr. Wright." He turned his attention back to the data recorder. It was a small square-shaped object with rounded edges and several buttons on one side. It seemed obvious to him which button would play the information, as there were only a red, a yellow, and a green button. Gates pressed the green button, and a map of the solar system came into view in front of him. He placed the data recorder on a small table and watched with great interest. The rest of the crew, save for Wright, who was busy piloting the ship, gathered around to see for themselves. A voice could be heard as the map drew itself into focus on Planet Zero. It was Cheryl's voice. They listened and watched, as if raptured in another time and place. "This must be quite disorienting for you guys. You probably thought that I was deceased or being tortured or perhaps even used for evil. I assure you that none of those things are true, at least not anymore. I was rescued by a faction of these beings who are not in agreement with the ruling powers on this planet. When they heard of my abduction, they acted quickly to free me, but the damage had already been done, and the link had already been established. There was no way to safely return me to redemption without it killing me. The ruling powers wanted me to freely speak for them, but I refused. Once the link was established, I could sense that their intentions were hostile towards redemption and towards Earth. While they have achieved incredible technological advancements, they have not yet mastered the art of space travel. In fact, many of them are incredibly phobic of the idea. The signal that was sent to Earth was actually meant as warning for us to stay away. From what I've learned, the aliens who sent it were put to death for their actions. They sent it to warn us not to approach their planet, as the evil powers want desperately to commandeer our space vessels, reverse engineer, and build bigger and faster ships. These ruling powers are bloodthirsty and desire to conquer neighboring systems. Earth was first on their list. If you're watching this, I implore you to turn back redemption now and warn Earth not to send any more ships in this direction, not even to rescue me. I've made friends and feel that I have a purpose, a positive purpose here now. Besides costing me my life to return, I feel a kinship with these beings now. I'm at peace with my fate and wish to go on helping the good ones on this planet. Commander, please tell my parents that I am well. I'm helping to lead a revolution in this world, a revolution fighting for freedom and social change. I think they'll be proud. Also, within the memory of this data recorder is buried the most amazing scientific knowledge ever gathered from my estimations. There are maps, detailed maps, and more inside this thing. You'll find every technological advancement these beings have discovered, and it far surpasses that of Earth's. These people have no diseases. This device holds the secrets of this entire civilization. It could be the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe for us humans. I'm pretty sure this will solve a great deal of Earth's issues and unite us like we've never dreamed possible. I'm so willing to stay here if this would be the result. I'll continue to work with the good powers on this planet to bring about peace and freedom. The ruling powers seem to be bent on pursuing dominion over other planets. I'm working to stop this and, more specifically, to stop them from hurting Earth. Godspeed, Redemption. I hope you make it home safely. No one knew what to say. They just sat there with only the hum of the engines to fill the silence. Gates looked out the window to see them pass into the shadow of the dark side of Planet Zero. Chapter 16, Marooned. Wright maneuvered the ISRS far around the planet, calculating how much fuel he could spare to keep them safely away from the grasp of the massive alien object. After another 20 minutes, they entered the atmosphere of Planet Zero. Outside of the ISRS, the planet's atmosphere stirred around them as they made their entry. Gates scanned the planet's surface with his eyes and asked Johnson to run scans. He wanted to be as far away from any signs of life or technology as possible. If they were going to be marooned, undoubtedly for the rest of their lives, then they needed space between themselves and the revolution that was happening on this planet. I'd prefer to be away from any ocean, if you catch my meaning, Mr. Wright. Wright did indeed know exactly what his commander was insinuating. The alien object had emerged from the center of the ocean on the other side of the planet. This nightmare began over the ocean. He knew Commander Gates was hoping for a more peaceful experience in seclusion, if at all possible. They were now the aliens on Planet Zero. Even though it wasn't their fault, they were now the invaders, and Benjamin Gates wanted to avoid conflict with these far superiorly advanced beings. They were at a severe disadvantage, but Gates was determined to figure out how to live and thrive on this planet as long as it took for them to be rescued. The ISRS flew low over the rocky and colorful surface of the planet. It was night on this side, and the engines of ISRS lit up the top of the rocky hills as they passed over. After searching for several minutes, Johnson finally found a spot sufficient for the ship to land on. "Right there," she said. Wright and Gates responded almost in unison, which meant they obviously agreed. The spot Johnson had chosen was secluded on all sides by a hilly and rocky terrain. This would keep them from being spotted directly from all directions. However, nothing would keep them protected if a craft flew over top of them. Johnson rightly pointed out that the metals in the rocky hills would scatter basic scanners from picking up their signals or life signs. The only issue was those same metals kept their scanners from warning them of approaching vessels or beings as well. The center valley of the hills was filled with what looked like a body of fresh water. There appeared to be plenty of space for them to build shelters and for the ISRS to sit off to the side. They touched down on the surface of Planet Zero for the first time. It was not lost to the small crew that they were making history, even if no one may ever know they made history. Wright shut down the engines, and they all sat there taking in the moment. The dust settled around the spacecraft, and they began to unstrap from their seats. Gates was the first to stand and asked, "Is the air outside breathable?" Adina answered. It seems so, Commander. Gates moved towards the side hatch of the cabin and turned to his crew. This is our new reality. It sucks, but we can do this. We have to do this. He punched the open button with the side of his fist, and the hatch opened. A beautiful aroma of plant life rushed into the cabin with a wonderfully cool breeze. They all breathed in this fresh air and actually found some level of comfort in it. Burton asked, Commander, I'd like to climb to the top of these hills and get a look at our surroundings. Maybe set up some kind of perimeter with these explosives? Gates nodded in approval. That sounds like a good idea, at least for our protection the first few nights we're here. I want to see what's over these hills too. In fact, I think we all could use some exercise. The crew, Gates, Fox, Wright, Montgomery, Johnson, and Burton, all walked out of the ship together and made their way towards the base of the northern hill from their position. The climb was only mildly difficult, and within a matter of a few minutes they were all standing on top, looking out over the vast plain of pink grass. Mountains filled the horizon in front of them and behind them. The planet's 2 moons were very large in the sky and loomed like giant beacons before them. Commander Benjamin Gates took in the scene and appreciated the calmness of his crew in such dire circumstances. This new home had been forced upon them. They would face many hardships and trials together. He was confident that, as long as they stuck together as a team, they could survive. Then he saw it. A small light moving quickly in the plains below. It was off in the distance and ahead of them, but it was traveling with great speed. He couldn't make out anything other than the light itself, but he was sure there must be someone driving or directing it. And it was coming straight towards them. Thanks for listening to this episode of Planet Zero. I'm author and narrator Brian Donahue. This podcast is a part of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Make sure to tune in to all of the great podcasts on the network, including the Trek Geeks original podcast, the Sci-Fi Sisters, and my personal favorite, the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and rate this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. That will help get it in front of more listeners. Until next time, stay tuned for the next exciting adventures of Planet Zero. The adventure is just beginning.